Hi, this is Rhonda Mays, Executive Director of the Fair Housing Council of the Capital Region. And we are pleased to have tonight our first mayoral candidate in our series of discussions with the Harrisburg candidates for mayor for this 2025 primary and general election season. And tonight we have with us Dan Miller, who you may already know is our city treasurer, and he is now running for mayor. And with us, joining us today is our homebuyer education facilitator. Some of you may recognize him as a regular presence at the Fair Housing Council of the Capital Region. His name is Edward Glover, and Edward will be joining us in our conversation with Dan Miller this evening.
Hi, Rhonda.
Hi, Dan. It's so wonderful to see you again. And thank you for joining us this evening in our discussion.
Yes, glad to be here.
Conversation, pretty much a housing talk, kind of laid back, informal discussion about your ideas regarding housing within the city. And we know that housing is a very hot topic in the city right now. There's a housing crisis. A lot of people like to say affordable housing crisis in the community. And my idea about affordable housing, I always like to use the example that if you make $15,000 a month, $5,000 for your housing is considered affordable, right? If you make $1,000 a month, $5,000 in rent is not affordable. So affordable is relative. What we're talking about a lot of times in the city when we say a lack of affordable housing is housing that is not affordable for the extremely low and moderate income community, especially since COVID. We've seen rental housing prices and home ownership prices go up a lot, especially rentals. So we brought you in. We wanted to talk about your ideas about low to moderate income housing opportunities and home ownership also, which is the two issues that the Fair Housing Council is most known for, rental housing and home ownership. So welcome you tonight, and I think Edward will lead off the conversation tonight.
All right. So, have a few questions prepared here. One of the questions that we asked, how will you improve housing situations to make the city better?
That's a pretty broad question there. I mean, I think the way to do that is to come, just like what we've done for the past half hour, is number one, work with the Fair Housing Council, work with, other entities that are interested in this. Because I do think the answer to, I'm with Rhonda. What the heck does affordable housing mean? I really don't like that term. I know what HUD says, it's 30% of your gross income spent on rent and utilities. But when somebody hears affordable housing, they think of themselves, right? And so it's what does that mean to them? So I think it's really tricky to really talk about affordable housing. But I do think it's important to talk about housing, home ownership, etc. And I think home ownership I think it's a great goal for everyone. Not everyone wants to own, but I'm very much pro home ownership. I can see it when I walk in the neighborhoods. The people who own their homes seem to take better care of them.
I agree.
And they vote because you can tell their house, I'm going to the voters' houses and those are the ones that are fixed up a little bit better, etc. And I think people would like to own their home, and that also creates wealth, and it's a long-term proposition, but in 20, 25, 30 years, you own your home. And that gets that, that's when you start generating some wealth. So I'm all for all of those things, and I hope.
Awesome.
So you think, how can we improve it? First of all, I'm not an expert in this field, so I don't want to say I know the answers, but I certainly want to work with people who can do it. I think we need to make it easier for people to actually purchase the home and get started refurbishing it. And some of that is, I've heard there's problems or difficulties, building things in the city because there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. And so I don't know the best way to do that, but those are the things I'd want to look at and try to make better. The other thing is, I am a landlord. I've been a landlord for 30 years, right? And I always felt like I got lumped in with like bad landlords.
That stigma.
That like all landlords are the same and stuff, and I don't, I'd love to get a rating from our tenants over the 30 years because I think we're very good landlords. When we would renovate a place, I'd want to renovate it to a place that I think I could live in, and keep it that way. And I wasn't, when I looked actually what rental properties are going for, I can see our rental property rents are low because, but I don't mind that if I have a good tenant and they can create wealth. And I really love when one of our tenants leaves and buys a house. Right. Because I feel like we've helped them along the way. So those are the kind of things that I would like to. But I always felt like, well, we should, I know that's another program, I know it's more work, but somehow if we could rate landlords, and that landlords who are actually good can get like a better rating and something more favorable, so that we know that landlord handles people well, treats the property correctly, does good kind of work. So that if they want to buy another property, we have a property that's available that needs renovated, you try to get one of, a landlord like that. I'm thinking of a landlord right now who I wouldn't give that to because it's a property close to our house. I'm not going to tell you. It's a beautiful property. And this person owns a lot of properties, and what did they do? They ruined it, in my opinion. They took the windows out and put these things in, and it had a little eye in this, the eye in the roof.
Yeah, okay.
That architectural detail, yep. Yes. Removed that. I mean, they took a really nice looking house in a nice location and turned it into a 2-unit apartment, which I can't understand how the city let them do it, because they never should have allowed that, in my opinion, but they did. And that's the kind of landlord, no, you are not somebody we want to encourage to do more work in Harrisburg.
Okay.
So it might be some kind of 1 to 5 rating, and 5s can, that's who we want to work with.
You brought up a good point, and I wanted to touch on something on what you said there. So, with this person changing this house, was it a historical house or something like that?
It was. It is someone this is their business, so they're really into it. It's not somebody like me who just happens to own a couple rental properties, and I think a lot of people just own a couple, but I don't know that. So that person could devote the time, and they went in and were able to get a special exemption from the city to allow them to do it. And it's sort of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And anyway, so now that's done and it's over with.
So I wanted to touch on that. So, like, say for example, if somebody wants to remodel the house and it's deemed historic, or there's a tree that's deemed historic or something, and they feel they want to get rid of the tree or do any fixtures to either modernize the home or anything like that, why does the city give so much pushback on certain things? I have a friend of mine who has a large tree, and this is out in Susquehanna. They have a large tree in the house, but the township won't let them cut it down because the tree is historic. How does that tree become historic? The township's not helping with the leaves cleanup. They're not helping with the raking of the leaves or the trash cleanup.
We're not going to get into Susquehanna Township.
Yeah, because I can't answer that one because I don't. But I will. But I do have an example of that, and you might know, and you would know this restaurant if I told you. No, and it was a historic building. Mm-hmm. And I happened to be on the Building and Housing Committee at the time. Mm-hmm. And these people came in and said, we're going to do, they had a plan. And they were going to do everything the way the Historic Commission required to do it.
Okay.
And they got approved. Then they went and they did something else.
Everything opposite.
And I know, and it was a difficult situation, but it was like, wait a second, I have to stand up for the city building and housing people, and basically they lied to them, and then they wanted to. They were doing we're going to do what we want to do, and then ask for forgiveness, and that's exactly what they did. But we didn't allow that because you can't. That's not the way the city can operate. That's not genuine, and that's not going to be right to the guy who has to do it and does it right and spend, So I think Historic Commission is important. A lot of times it's just the outside. I will tell you one other thing. Back when I first bought my office building at 2nd and North Street there was some problems with the chimney, and I was more of a new owner, and I wanted to take the chimney down because it needed to be repointed and it was going to be expensive to me at the time, unaffordable, whatever. And they didn't want to let me do it. And so I had to do the and I'm so glad I did, because I'm glad they didn't allow me to do it, because they were right. I was being cheap, and it's better for the building, it's better for the neighborhood, it's better for everybody. And I think that was the right decision, although I didn't like it at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to look at the bigger good, and I wasn't looking at that at that time.
Gotcha.
Right. So if you allow these kinds of issues to just go on and with no consequences, or I'll just do what I want to do, eventually it basically just negates the whole reason that we have these kinds of requirements, and you need to be compliant.
It wasn't yesterday, a couple of days ago, I biked down Penn Street from like the 2000, really above it, to all the way to when does it end? At Forster. I went the whole, and it was a beautiful day. And I thought, I wish I had a camera while I was biking down there, because it's lovely.
Yes.
Why is it lovely? Because these are brick homes in a historic district. They're all kept nice. Who wouldn't want to live there in that type of atmosphere? So, if they're painted purple or whatever they do to them, like they did to this house close to me, which wasn't in the historic district, and then ruins it, then that's an impact not only just on that neighborhood, the whole city.
Right.
What's good about Harrisburg is living in that type of way, like on Penn Street, for example, because people love living there.
Right. So we want to be respectful of the historic fabric. It's not like Harrisburg is one big old homeownership association where you can't put a air conditioner in the window or you can't paint your house, purple. But we do respect our neighborhoods and the fabric of that neighborhood. You don't want a block of Bellevue Park to start looking like Midtown with a bunch of stores and Midtown is fine for Midtown or downtown, but it's not good for that particular neighborhood called Bellevue Park, right? So we have these regulations and these requirements in place for a reason, and because we need to respect our neighborhood.
Excuse me.
And that goes into what kind of neighborhood do you want to live in? What kind of community do you want to live in? To try to make Harrisburg attractive to as wide a number of people as possible, right? So if you want a more lively neighborhood, you may want to live in Midtown. You may want to live in downtown. If you want peace and quiet, you may want to live in Bellevue Park or Riverside or something like that. So so regulations and compliance is not always a bad thing. They're there for a reason. Which brings me into my question. The Fair Housing Council is overseen by the federal government, Department of Housing and Urban Development in particular. And one of our mandates is that we affirmatively further fair housing. It's the AFFH rule, which was recently rescinded on the federal level by the Trump administration. So I received a response email from the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission about the rescinding of this mandate that has been in place for a long, long time. And the point of the AFFH mandate is to take meaningful actions to overcome barriers and to housing barriers and combat discrimination, even if that means regulating through ordinances, legislation, in order to guarantee equitable housing. So, seeing as that is not a focus of necessarily the federal government level anymore, do you believe that that the city can do some things to kind of make sure that discriminatory practices and equitable housing opportunities and housing choice is a priority within the city?
Well, of course, I'm not exactly familiar with that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that Trump's administration did it because that's craziness. Mm-hmm. But we do have our own Human Relations Commission and ordinance there. So I suspect that would all fall under that. I mean, obviously we're against discrimination. Everybody should have a level playing field, and we should try to help people get a little step up. As we talked, home ownership is so important in the neighborhood, in taking care of the property, and also of creating wealth. And it's important for everybody to create wealth so that then they can do other things. They can go even further. So I'm not sure what additional legislation needs to be done, if there is any, but because we do have our Human Relations Commission that would be against any kind of discrimination. I think it's in housing. It includes housing. So
if someone finds that they're having, what we find here a lot, what's coming up a lot at the Fair Housing Council are mental health issues, people who have been diagnosed with a mental health disability, and a lot of emotional support animal questions. A lot of times a landlord considers what we call an ESA, emotional support animal, a pet. They have a no pet policy, and they do not want to back down as far as, allowing the animal in the unit. We get that a lot now. So of course the landlord is not allowed to consider the ESA a pet, and they have to allow it even with a no pet policy. But it seems as though the city, through the city's human relations office, would be able to investigate that, maybe even let them know that, hey, it maybe has some kind of consequences for landlords that are not willing to comply with, that part of it's really part of the Fair Housing Act. You cannot discriminate against someone based on their disability.
As a landlord myself, I was never crazy about, not pets, dogs. And I love dogs. But I was always worried that if you had some dog in there that's barking all day long, it's bothering the other tenants. And so I really I wasn't not in favor of someone who wanted to have a dog. This is a little different because, I've been working with somebody who actually has, I guess, an ESA. I'm not sure what that stands for, but
emotional support.
Yeah, emotional support.
Different from a service animal.
No, this is emotional support.
Okay.
And this person, every time we get together, and it's a pretty big dog, and that dog is with us, and it gets under the table or whatever. But it's my own ignorance, because that dog is like very well behaved.
Yeah.
That dog is not going to bark. That dog is not going to go to the bathroom, or whatever. So maybe I think it's about education, and trying to educate the landlord that this is not going to be a problem. Because if the dog's not a problem, then the landlord's going to be okay with them having a dog.
Right, and we do get a lot of questions about the behavior of the animal now, or the support animal. The tenant must have control over the animal at all times. And if they cannot be bothersome, because, people have their right to peaceful enjoyment of their home. And if they tear up the apartment, then, that comes out of their security deposit. But you can't charge a pet fee, you can't charge a monthly fee, but you can take it from the... So there are requirements. People can't just say, I have an ESA, and then just, let anything happen. Barking would not be allowed. The tenant could lose their home.
Well, are those dogs certified in some way? I would think they are. They'd have to be trained and then certified.
No, that's a service animal.
Oh.
An ESA is just an animal. You could have an ESA fish.
Oh, so it doesn't have to be certified?
No.
It would be
only
great if it
service
were,
animal.
because then you could. Because if somebody just says it, then it's really
You
tricky.
can't just say it. You need to get documentation from your physician, from a healthcare professional.
Okay.
That's saying, now what that means, that's pretty broad. But a healthcare professional stating that due to a general disability, mental health, this person,
Well, it's all about behavior of the animal, really, when you get down to it.
That comes down to control. Now, there's a no pet policy, then, no pets. But an ESA or a service animal, that the tenant must have control over that animal at all times.
I was also hearing too that some of the people were kind of falsifying some of the documents too, and kind of generating them online as far as those that ESA paperwork or whatever. Then they were handing that to the landlord, and it was like a falsified document or something that they said that they had paid for it or something.
Right, but I'm finding that I'm not sure how widespread that is. There is, these kinds of document generating mills online. You pay a fee, $100, and you can get this letter from a physician. I'm not sure how widespread that is, but that's something for the property manager and the tenant and their physician to handle. We don't get into that, but we do talk about the right to be able to maintain an ESA in the property. And that also goes with for hotels, and boarding rooms. Did you have another question?
Yeah. What new innovation ideas and would you implement to bring in new homes into the area? As far as right now, there's all sorts of new innovative ideas on shipping containers or new builds or kind of the tiny homes or even the unboxable ones. Now, me, from my perspective, I'm a real estate investor as well. So I think as far as a lot of these empty lots, shipping container homes would be ideal because you can kind of come in with a crane, kind of just drop them into place as long as the platform and the base is set up for them. Have you looked into or thought about any other innovative ideas?
I love those videos on YouTube. So I'm always watching the tiny home ones, the shipping container ones, and etc. And I've seen shipping container apartments, or condos, and but although I got the sense that shipping containers really weren't the best, because they're difficult to work with, and the insulation is bad on them, and so I don't know. I don't want to say let's get at shipping containers, and I could say those things have their place. I mean, I think they have tiny homes now in South Harrisburg where the Veterans Park is, and I haven't been down to see them, but I've seen the videos where there's a group of tiny homes, and then they have a community room where they maybe cook and go to the bathroom and that type of thing. But I think tiny homes are great. I think I have to be real cautious about them. This is a city with, permanent brick homes, and that's really positive, I think, for our city. And there are a lot of vacant lots around here, and I'd like to see things on them. And so, if it's a quality structure, we should try some of these things.
Right. There's some research that I've been doing. I've been kind of researching shipping container homes for about 5 years now, and they have come a long ways. I do visit these other cities as far as DC, Philadelphia, and everything, and they have them incorporated into their communities and everything. So now I'm seeing lots of newer technology as far as they're insulating them top, bottom, and everything, also making them watertight as well. But as far as like some of the vacant lots and everything, I think those can kind of fit perfectly into some of those extra lots and everything, as long as the plumbing and everything is set up and electrical is all that's set up for. Would you be open to kind of like?
Definitely.
Okay.
I mean, this is at our garden, but I got a permit last summer, and I've started it, but I haven't finished it, and now I may never finish it if I become mayor. But I wanted to build a shed, and I wanted to do it in a really sustainable way. And so I was going to use have you seen the ones where they use the pallets? And you build it with the pallet shell, and then I don't really need to do this, but you'd stuff like old clothes in for the insulation in between, and then you do cob. Are you familiar with cob? Cob is basically it's clay, sand, and then straw and water. You make it in
Pueblo houses.
But it's cob. It's a different thing because it's in England. It's all over the world, and it's a very inexpensive way. But you can make it's like a what do you just call container home. Right. You can make really cool shipping container homes, right? Mm-hmm. You can make really bad ones, right. But with cob you can make this really great things. And so I wanted to see if we could do a cob structure. And so, I mean, there's sort of requirements. It has to be, you can't put it right on the ground, and you have to have it really a nice roof so it doesn't, but then you put lime wash over it, which hardens it, and, so it would be great for a shed. So I'm really open to this kind of thing, but I don't want to go hog wild on it until we really have a sense of this is going to be positive and how it's going to work.
Gotcha. Understandable.
It's interesting.
But I do love those videos.
It sounds environmentally
it's great.
Friendly and sustainable.
Completely.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, these are very breathable homes. Mm-hmm. So they stay warm. Mine's a shed, but so I won't be heating it. But if you have a home, it stays warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer because it breathes. Okay. And so, it doesn't have the humidity in there. So there's a lot of.
It petrifies over time, right? With the being breathable, because it draws in some of the moisture and it pushes it out as far as the composition.
Yeah, there's a lot of positive things about them.
So that's a good point for talking about affordability for the low to moderate
and
income
affordable.
Community. Right. So if you using materials and different methods that will lower your heating bill in the winter, your cooling bill in the summer, then that could make the difference between something that is affordable and not affordable. We're also talking about seniors who, are on fixed incomes, and Social Security, that need to live in a place that's affordable. And we're talking about 30% is affordable as far as housing is concerned. And you're making $780 a month in Social Security. That means that your rent must be somewhere around $250, $260 a month. So, but a tiny home, not only is it normally they're about the size of an apartment, but if you have one that's also environmentally friendly and kind of off-grid, as much as possible, if you're setting up a community within the city. But you know, you have all kinds of economies going on that will help you to save money. It seems as though, I don't know what the red tape would be to be able to develop these kinds of homes within the community, and zoning and all of those other kinds of gnarly issues. But I would love to see the city really investigate that seriously and try to implement some of these alternative housing, supplies that people
Yeah.
be.
I mean, I do know that in the videos that I watched, they can be they're certainly not the regular building construction codes types of things. You have to get a special exemption or something to do them, but there's a lot of cool things out there. So
Right. And how up to date are our codes? I mean, in order to be able to implement some of these strategies and these new ideas, then, like you're saying, I mean, you can't get an exemption maybe not necessarily an exemption, but maybe having codes revised to re-evaluated for these newer kinds of concepts.
I would think if someone came like that, I would be willing to do it like in a limited basis. Mm-hmm. So let's not change any codes, mm-hmm. but let's say, okay, let's do 5 of these homes. If somebody wants to do them, mm-hmm. see how they work out. Does it make sense? Do they fit with the community? Then you take it from there, as opposed to just say no.
Project.
Yeah,
project or something.
Exactly.
Demonstrate, yeah.
Like that.
And speaking of codes, before we turned on the cameras, we had an interesting conversation about codes, who I find to be one of the more efficiently run departments in the city. And but one of the problems I think that codes has is that quite often they'll get a call from a resident because of maintenance issues. There's serious issues within their unit, whether they're renting a house or they're renting an apartment. Codes doesn't know about it because the unit was never registered with the city as a property that's being rented. So a lot of times when Codes finds out, is when someone calls to complain about the conditions there. And my concern is that it's very difficult. They can't go online and find out, is this person actually registered, legally renting this unit, this house in the city, before they decide to rent the place, right? And I had the discussion that the Fair Housing Council has done a right to know request most years for a good number of years in order to get a list of registered landlords, rental properties. So I wanted to get your ideas on camera, on video, about what your ideas are, your response to needing to do a right to know who is a legal landlord in the city.
Well, I'm very big on transparency, as we talked about, and actually I put all of the city's real estate taxes online for anybody to go see for free. Very simple to do it. Go to the Treasurer's website and you can follow this thing from there. And I'm so big on transparency because I don't know if you realize that we, the city administration, just put the 2022 audited financial statements on their website in February. This is 2025. That is, in my mind, a huge lack of transparency. It's incompetence. It's unacceptable. I know that's a little aside, but it's like, I'm not in favor of that. And I don't think I want our legal department wasting its time on right to know requests. So let's put as much information out there and let people, these are citizens of our city. It's their information. I don't see me, if I'm the mayor, trying to hide anything, because that's not what I'm about, and that's not what so let's put the information out there. If there's some reason we can't put it out, okay, there's a legal reason, but I'm very much for. Now, when you were talking about that, I know the file of the trash. There's 16,000 bills that we do every month. That file, that's a digital file, that has the address of the owner. It also has the address of who's living there. Well, it would be easy enough for, if there are apartments that aren't registered as a rental unit, it would be really easy to see who's living there versus the property address isn't the same. Well, then it's pretty obvious that's a rental. So, this is the kind of thing that makes me crazy about the city. It's very poorly managed. It's so poorly managed, and I can see that as a CPA, as a controller, as a treasurer down there. There's no reason that we shouldn't be right on top of that. I'm not a genius. It doesn't take a genius to see that we can cross-reference that and say, okay, these are rental properties, and then go investigate them. And they should be registered, and why there's no reason, in my mind, why we shouldn't list every rental property online. So if you want to go look up if it's a rental or it's at a home, go ahead.
Yes. Yes.
And we should know the owners of those homes too. Because just an aside, because I found a piece of property that's a city-owned small piece of land, and it was next to what I'm assuming is a rental unit. And I wanted to talk to that owner because I wanted to put a sign up there for Dan Miller, right? But I wanted to talk to the guy. He didn't own it, but he lived next door. Well, it's owned by like SPC such and such. Well, who can I talk to about that? You can't do it. So I think we should. Why not have the owners' names up there too?
Yes. Okay.
So I'm for that.
Thank you. All right.
Speaking, kind of coattailing off of that, so we were talking previously before the cameras were rolling, we were talking about landlords, good landlords or bad landlords, if there can be some sort of landlord database. Now, kind of following, Baltimore City has a large vacant house problem. So what they're doing, this just kind of came into effect. I believe the new mayor is basically fining any of these landlords that are not taking care of their property or doing, they kind of got like a 5-year plan that they're going to fine them, and it's going to double every year up until that 5 years. After that 5 years, if they haven't done or taken care of these fines, then the city will now take over ownership of these properties and either put them back in circulation, tear them down, or whatever. Do you see any of that on the horizon, or any something like that as a similar way to kind of tackle some of these landlords and kind of get the fire under their butt to kind of take responsibility for their tenants and their properties?
I'm not aware of that program or had heard it before, but sounds like fun. Yes, if that's your property, you're responsible for it. And this is a city where we all live together. We cannot have a property like that in a neighborhood, because nobody wants a property that's not being responsibly maintained, or that's just vacant and sitting there being dilapidated. So either we punish them, or we do other things to enhance or entice them to fix up. But I'd be certainly open to some idea like that. I'm not familiar with it, but as we were talking about, let's just maybe 4 doors down from my house, where a landlord from New York City owns it. People moved out, left the back door open, left food in the refrigerator, got infested with mice and rats. And it's still a vacant property, and it's like, this makes no sense. And so why? We ought to be able to do something about that, because obviously that landlord doesn't care at all, and it's not good for the neighbor, any neighbor around there. It's not good for the neighborhood. It's not good for the city.
I agree.
That sounds similar to what Dan and I were talking about. We didn't get a chance to bring you in on that conversation, but the Act 135. So that Dan said he's interested in learning more about. And it sounds very similar to what Edward was talking about in Baltimore. Yeah, so there are definitely some different models out there for handling these derelict homes within our community that it's worthwhile taking a look at for Harrisburg.
Right.
Also, definitely. The last thing, I know we're a little bit over time.
We have to ask the right question now.
Well, that's the last question, so I think it'll be the right question. We want to get a little bit more information from you since you mentioned the tax, the trash bill. And I know that is a big issue that you have been discussing on the campaign trail and in debates, very briefly, because debates are set up that way, very
Correct.
brief answers. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to give us a little bit more detail about the issue and how you plan to resolve it as mayor.
Great, thank you. Because right now we have almost $14 million of uncollected delinquent trash fees. That's a lot of money. And nothing's been happening. And the background is, basically it was the strong plan, which, I think was not very good for Harrisburg at all. But before the strong plan, Harrisburg would bill monthly for sewer, water, and trash on the same bill. We had a revenue department in the city that was charged with collecting those bills, okay? So when the strong plan went into effect, the sewer and water no longer owned by the city. They're owned by Capital Region Water. The revenue department went to Capital Region Water to collect those. And all we were left with was billing for trash, and we're still doing it on a monthly basis. The problem with that is that, and I believe this is correct, we cannot say to someone, if you don't pay your bill, we're not going to pick up your trash. Because that's a problem for the neighborhood, the whole city. So we are going to pick up your trash whether you pay it or not. When we had sewer, water, and trash, we had what I call a hammer. If you didn't pay, we'd come out and turn your water off. Ultimately, we didn't do it right away, but it was like, listen, you're going to. So you paid. People paid, so they were able to collect. We don't have anything now. So if you haven't paid for the past 10 years, we've picked up your trash, and there's very little we're doing about it. There's nothing we're doing about it.
And that's because you guys turned over the whole trash department to an outside source,
It's because we don't have a mechanism to make you pay. And so people aren't paying, and we don't have a department down there that's dedicated to it. So it's basically fallen into the cracks, and nobody's done anything now, except for me. Because I started this in 2018. I tried to get the prior mayor to do it. I tried to get this mayor to do it. And I think there's a very simple solution, okay? And the solution, and it's a great solution in many ways too, because I got this from Allentown at a conference I was at for the state of accounting finance officers of municipalities. What Allentown does is we bill the real estate taxes in January, and we do that in Treasury. What I'd like to do, and what Allentown does, is they add the trash fee right on there. So here's your real estate tax, here's the annual trash fee, and now you can pay it. I'd like it to be that you get a 2% discount, just like you do with your real estate taxes. So if you pay it within 60 days, 70% of the citizens, people who own property, pay that within 60 days. That's a huge amount.
Wow, yeah.
And so then if you don't pay within 60 days, you pay within 120 days, you're just still paying the flat rate. Right. 85% of people do that. So then we only have 15% that haven't done anything. So I'd expect it would still be the same. So most people would pay that. We would get a huge chunk of the money early in the year that then Treasury can then invest and earn interest on.
Wow, yeah.
Not only that, we eliminate monthly billing. There's 200,000 invoices that go out in a year. That means 200,000 payments coming back. If we eliminate that, just the direct costs save us hundreds of thousands of dollars. Postage, paper. It takes the IT department 3 days to print those bills.
Every month.
Yes, every month. Then it goes to the mail department. I can't tell you how long it takes them, but that's a big project there. This is craziness.
Okay.
Now, as a treasurer, most of our work is collecting those 200,000 payments that are coming in every month. I haven't calculated it's hard for me to calculate how much that would save, but it would be lots and lots of money. This makes incredible basic sense.
I like that.
And none of our mayors have been willing to do it. Now, I get the pushback of, we're worried about somebody who can't afford it. Well, right now, if you can't afford to pay trash, what's your relief? Nothing. There's no relief. It just accumulates onto your bill. If you move or die and you pay, your house goes up for sale, you've got to pay that. It's coming out of your proceeds to come to the city for the trash. In the proposal that I made, I put an extra little thing down there that for elderly low income, and if you qualify like HUD, and then depending on where you are, you can get a 50%, 75%, or 100% reduction in your trash fee. So it takes care of that. And the truth is, people pay their real estate taxes. We collect 98 or 99% of our real estate taxes. Why? Sorry about that. We do it, why? Because people know they have to pay. Right. Or what happens, it goes to the county's going to sell them. So this is, and this may be my own blind spot, but it's $400 a year. It's not $4,000 a year. The trash fee is roughly $400 a year. And you still have to pay it, one way or the other. And the other thing is I get sometimes a pushback by saying, well, I can't afford all that at once. Well, we're not asking you to do that. We already have a payment plan for real estate taxes. I mean, you've got so many ways to pay. You can pay within 60 days and get a discount. You can pay 120 days and not get a penalty. You could wait till December 31st and pay, and you're only paying a 10% penalty. So that's $40. And we also have payment plans. So if you want to pay your real estate taxes in 4 payments, you do have to contact our Treasury office. We do have to set that up for you. That's not automatic. You have to come in and make the first payment, and then you have to make the other payments. And you have to make them. If you don't make them, you're going to get the penalty. But we have all of this already in place. So I think it's a winning scenario for us collecting more money. It's a winning scenario for saving money, and that savings is going to be every single year. Let's say we're saving $300,000 or $400,000 every single year. That's not even including the time we're saving in staff, or where staff can be reallocated. It's such a crucial thing to do, but so far I can't get anyone really on board to do it. So if I'm mayor, we're going to do it.
I'm a numbers person, and everything you said makes sense. And I'm thinking, I'm like, holy crap! Just imagine the man hours, the amount of postage, the amount of paper you're spending. You're taking 3 days out of somebody's work week to gather that. So yeah, it makes sense. It's
for
a no-brainer.
$30-something trash bill, $40-something trash bill. That's an incredible amount of. Well, what kind of pushback are you getting for this proposal? As far as this proposal, any negative feedback? Why?
Well, here's the thing that here, what's difficult for me is I've written, a synopsis of this. I've sent it to city council members. Only one city council member has ever responded to me, and that is Lamont Jones, and he seems to get it. When we've talked about, because I'm willing to talk about it. I tried to meet with them. They have refused to have a meeting on it.
Who is they? City
City
Council?
Council.
City Council. I mean, other than Lamont. Lamont tried to get a meeting, but
Why are they refusing any of the meetings if it's going to save the city money? That should be open.
This is where I can't understand. Because they because first of all, they've never probably read and don't understand it. Because you hear like Gloria Martin Roberts, I saw just on a YouTube thing where she's saying that I want to put liens on property. This has nothing to do with liens. We're not putting liens on. This is just the regular way of real estate taxes. So that's incorrect. And so that shows they don't know and haven't looked at it. And then there's, and then they say, well, this is going to cause people who are elderly and lower income not to be able to pay. No, we have the provision right in the law to take care of that, which we don't have that now. So this is a step up from what we even have. I just think they get something in their head and they don't really understand the facts and they haven't looked at it. And so it's a stunning kind of thing. And this is the stunning type of mismanagement we have at the city. It's not just in this. This is a prime example. And that's why I'm going to be such a good mayor if I make it, because I'd be the first business professional who understands these types of things and can implement these and save the city tons of money and do things more efficiently at the same time and make it better for the residents, make this experience with the city so much better. So yeah, that's why I'm frustrated. That's why I'm running for mayor. That's really the reason. Because I talked to Wanda about this 4 years ago. She came into my living room. She said, I said, this is what I want, Wanda. She said, yeah, we'll do that in the first month that I'm mayor. So I realized it's not going to happen unless, I guess, I become mayor.
Well, thank you for the discussion. I know you're running a little late for
That's fine.
dinner, but I appreciate you coming in and spending time and having such a substantive discussion.
Well, Rhonda, thank you so much. I've enjoyed it. Edward, thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for joining in and being, such engaged the community members and being interested in the mayoral race. And when is the primary?
May 20th. Or if you have a mail-in ballot, you can vote today and send it in.
All right. Well, this is Dan Miller for Mayor, talking to the Fair Housing Council, Housing Talk. This is our first show, so we're still getting the feel for this. But I do want you to know that the plan is for this to go out uncut, unfiltered, no fancy editing. So the discussion is the discussion. Your answers are the answers, and I hope we get a lot of views. And this is the first in a series of the mayoral candidates, like I mentioned. And please check out the Fair Housing Council's YouTube channel for more community discussions about housing and fair housing and anything housing. So we're really excited about that new initiative. And Edward's going to be joining me. He's looking like, oh, I am. Yes, you are. Great interview. Great interviewer.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.